very good evening. Welcome to BCN News. Leading our bulletin tonight, the rising tide of non-communicable diseases epidemic in the Pacific region, as well as climate change, have been emphasized by the Cook Islands Prime Minister Henry Puna while speaking at the Pacifica Medical Association conference this morning. The Cook Islands Prime Minister is a keynote speaker at the conference, which is currently being held at the Matavai Resort, where more than 100 medical practitioners are attending. Puna highlighted that he chose to attend the medical conference instead of the UN General Assembly in New York, as health is a major issue in the Pacific region.
I also wanted to be here because I pushed so hard at the recent Forum Leaders meeting in Tuvalu for health to become a standing agenda item for future Forum Leaders meetings. Because the reality is, we are facing numerous health challenges, particularly with NCDs and obesity. I don't like being known as part of the NCD capital of the world, and yet that is the reality that we in the Pacific, are very, very negligent, I think, with our health, particularly with NCDs. But I also wanted to be seen to be doing something about addressing that serious challenge. The last couple of years, we leaders in the region have been focused on climate change, and so we should, because it is an existential threat that faces all of us in the region. But also, I think we've taken our eyes off a more pressing challenge, and that is the health challenge facing our region. And I'm so pleased that when I raised it at the recent Forum Leaders meeting in Tuvalu, that my colleagues throughout the Pacific wholeheartedly agreed. So we made a good start. But I impressed on the PMA conference participants this morning that we need guidance from the professionals. I mean, we politicians might think we know everything, but in reality we know nothing. So we need to be guided in addressing the health issue and the health challenges of our region by real professionals.
He highlighted that most of the population in the Pacific do not have access to safe drinking water. He also touched on mental health as a major issue in the Pacific, as often unseen and overlooked, adding that climate change has exacerbated mental health in terms of uncertainty and anxiety, especially for those who depend on subsistence livelihood.
Climate change, of course, is a real threat that faces the whole region. And unfortunately, it also has, implications and impacts on health and health issues. And so, that's why I'm here in Niue. And I look forward to the outcomes from this PMA conference.
Close to 140 medical practitioners are attending the conference, including Dr. Colin Tukuitonga, Niuean medical practitioners and their colleagues from New Zealand and the Pacific. The Pacifica Medical Association conference ends this Thursday. Meanwhile, the Cook Islands Prime Minister Henry Puna was accorded a traditional Niuean ceremony called Takalo when he arrived at the airport yesterday afternoon. He was greeted by the acting Premier Billy Talangi, members of Cabinet, the Speaker of Parliament and the Secretary to Government at the airport yesterday. Niue will ban vaping. This was announced by the acting Premier and the Minister for Health Billy Talangi while speaking at the Pacifica Medical Conference this morning. The use of vaping is quite prevalent amongst youths on the island and those who have given up tobacco smoking but still use vaping as an alternative.
In December 2018, the Niue Assembly passed our first Tobacco Control Act. The price of a regular packet of cigarettes went from $13 to $35. Niue has one of the lowest rates of smoking in the Pacific. But we determined that our aim is to prevent our young people from taking up the habit for as long as we could. Although we have made progress in tobacco control, there is now a new challenge in the form of vaping products that warrants more attention. To this end, I am pleased to announce our desire to ban vaping in Niue. And very recently, instructions from our premier.
The government has confirmed that it will be imposing penalties as part of the regulations on environmental standards. This was revealed by the Minister of Environment and Natural Resources, Delton Tangilangi, last week.
The minister said that his office and the Crown Law Office are currently working on the draft regulations and anticipate these regulations will come into effect early next year. This will include amendments to the environmental recycling regulations of 2016. He said the regulations are part of the government's position on the banning of single-use plastics on the island. The government intends to provide the necessary time for the businesses to adapt to the new changes in the importation and use of single-use plastics.
And the Public Service Commission says they are now competing with other employers on the island and are having to re-advertise several vacancies. The Public Service Commission has sent out 2 recruitment circulars in the last 2 weeks, re-advertising some positions that have remained unfilled for some time now.
Public Service Commission Chairperson Victoria Kaloni, in a statement to BCN News, says that the Commission is now competing with other employers in the private sector and state-owned enterprises. She says it is understandable that people would decide on more attractive salary packages. BCN understands that there were very few applications to the positions advertised, and for some vacant positions there were no applicants at all. Kaloni says that having difficulties filling government positions is not necessarily a bad thing, because this provides them the opportunity to reassess what they are offering in terms of employment packages. She said that the Commission needs to be innovative as times have changed. The Commission says that the work environment is also changing as they have employees now working from home rather than the traditional 8 to 4 day. Limitations on human resource is not a new challenge for the Public Service Commission, which for a long while now have had to recruit from abroad to fill vacancies such as teachers and nurses and other technical staff. Mrs. Kaloni says that they have existing relationships within the region and other agencies and will utilize these options should they be required. This is Esther Pavahi for BCN News.
And finally, BCN News caught up with the Cook Islands Prime Minister earlier today and talked rugby and his first time in Niue 50 years ago. Here's BCN News reporter Esther Pavahi with the Prime Minister today.
I recall that time with absolute fondness. Those were the days when the Moana Roa was servicing both Niue and the Cook Islands. And I was a scholarshipper in New Zealand, and I happened to catch a Moana Roa that came through here. And of course we spent a day here. Those were the days when Papa Strickland was still alive, had a shop and a bakery. And of course I thought, I could go into the shop and help myself, but no. But absolute fondness. But I haven't been back here since, and that was over 50 years ago, for goodness sake. When I became Prime Minister in the Cook Islands, I had a vision of turning our little paradise into a clean and green destination, because, tourism is our backbone. And having been in Niue, hey, you don't have to try, because the whole island is clean and green. Trees everywhere. It's beautiful. And, I can understand why there's an increasing number of visitors wanting to come and experience this clean and green destination.
And of course, the most important question of the day, who do you think will win the Rugby World Cup?
As New Zealand citizens and loyal New Zealand citizens, I'm sure Niue and the Cook Islands will be barracking for the All Blacks. And thank God that we got off to a winning start last week against the mighty Boks.
This is Esther Pavahi for BCN News.
And that's BCN News for tonight. Thank you for joining us. Do join us same time tomorrow. Until then, good evening.